And whilst the album has lost some level of prestige it once had, physical copies of music are still an important part of the music ecosystem. And for music deemed progressive and experimental, Burning Shed is the de facto storefront to obtain these sort of items.
Yeah. So I think the first question I was wanting to ask is what was the incentive behind Burning Shed?
Well, Burning Shed sort of grew out of No Man mail order. When No Man was signed to One Little Indian Records and Epic in America, we'd always have a little thing of, if you'd like to know more, write to this address. And we used to sell on-demand CDRs and cassettes direct to the audience. Purely, it's ridiculous. Checks and letters coming through the post, us posting out things. And so this was kind of what we'd done on the side. We'd release albums properly through the record companies we were signed to, but we were always, we did this at gigs that we played as well. I'd stay behind, I'd collect names, because we were aware of the fact that being signed to companies could be temporary, that we could be dropped after 2 albums or 3 albums, and we wanted to build an infrastructure outside of the industry. That's number one. And I had this idea for a kind of cost-effective label that could put out people's more experimental solo work. Because at the time, this would be like late 90s, early 2000s, CDs were still selling massively, and we were all signed with our bigger bands. But say, for example, if Stephen had a radical idea for a solo project, no one would be interested in taking that kind of risk. And we just put out 3 CDRs, and it was a bizarre mechanism that we'd worked out that we could break even on 10 sales of this. And that was all it was about, really, was just kind of putting out more experimental music with interesting packaging directly to the audience. Luckily, all of the early releases were selling in the hundreds and the very low thousands. So immediately Burning Shed did well. And we were really surprised by the response, positive response.
At what point did it sort of become like a more de facto progressive rock store, if you will?
Well, yeah, I don't know whether I'd call it progressive rock store. I think that progressive rock is certainly probably the biggest genre that we deal with.
Yeah,
so there's no doubt that we specialize in progressive rock, and that globally, people from America, Sweden, you name it, see us almost as their local store for certain bands who can't buy elsewhere. And obviously, because of some of the bands that we host official stores for, we host official stores for King Crimson, Yes, Jethro Tull. So we have quite a number of progressive rock giants, but we sort of equally deal in experimental music, ambient music, post-rock, and kind of art rock and art pop. So the whole kind of Japan, Bowie, Roxy music, thing, that's figuring almost equally. But yeah, progressive rock has certainly become the most successful genre that we deal with. I suppose when it became the size it is, I mean, luckily some of the company's best years have been in the last 5 years. So it's still, despite dealing with physical media, CD, cassettes, books, vinyl, it's growing. It actually has been growing over the years. What was interesting for us is they'd never gone down.
The next main question I want to ask is, what are the demographics of people who buy stuff from the store?
That is a very good question. And we don't actually ask. We don't actually ask. But I think that generally speaking, of course, it's predominantly male. I'd say the bulk of the demographic is very, very specifically mid-40s to late 50s. But we do have obviously people in their 60s and 70s who buy. And surprisingly, where there's more, if Facebook, Spotify, and the others are to be believed, within the 18 to 30. So what's strange is we've got this demographic where I'd say, let's say, 43 to 59 is the bulk. But actually, there's quite a chunk of 18 to 30, and that's bigger than the 30 to 45, if that makes sense. It's a really unusual thing. Kind of is bigger than the 60 plus, and bigger than the 30 to mid 30s. So, but yeah, predominantly, I would say it's probably as well 80% male to 20% female.
That part checks out.
Well, it's curious that because I've noticed that, because obviously there are quite a number of artists that I deal with, and they've shared their demographics, and that's the difference with them. They'll actually have an audience from say 40 to 70, and it's pretty much consistent across that. but there's almost nothing below that. Whereas interestingly enough, with sort of No Man, Porcupine Tree, and I'm not quite sure, what that would be. We have a healthier chunk of 18 to 30, while the audience being kind of in our age group,